Yes, thanks for joining us today. This is Brandon Galarno with Tidestone Solutions. I am the Director of Business Development. This is our second webinar of our monthly webinar series, EFT for Payables. So keep an eye out for invitations going forward in the future on the next event. I'm just going to fly through a couple of slides here to introduce you to Tidestone for those of you that are on the call that aren't familiar with our company. Just a couple of key points here about our business. We've been improving the business process for our customers for 20 plus years. I think we're actually going on our 25th year here. We've been delivering productivity tools and business solutions. We're existing customer focused. We enjoy long-term relationships with our customers, and we primarily serve local businesses in the New England region. We do have a couple of customers out on the West Coast and down in Texas. Here's a few key points about our company and some of the things that we help our customers do. We help you with software selection. In addition to the Great Plains software, there's several other modules and add-ons that can help the systems. Data conversion, integrating applications, training and support. So in addition to things like these webinars that we're doing, we also offer classroom-style training. So I encourage any of you that are interested in learning more about a specific module in GP to either reach out to your partner or to reach out to us. Also custom reporting, software implementation, automation of tasks, customization and development of your systems, and helping you refine your business process. And that's it. I will turn it over to Alicia for the Microsoft Dynamics GP EFT for Payables webinar.
All right, thanks, Brandon. And just to let you all know, we are recording this webinar so that if you have other coworkers who would like to view the webinar and weren't able to attend at this time, we will be putting that up on our website once we get the recording ready for you. So we'll just jump right in. Today we are talking about EFT for Payables. If you are a BRL customer, Business Ready Licensing, you may already own the module. If not, we can let you know how you would go about obtaining that module. So EFT for Payables, just a brief overview. The EFT for Payables, what it does is it creates a file so that you can make electronic payments to your vendors. You take that file that's exported from GP and you upload it on your online bank site. It works in conjunction with the way you process computer checks in GP. So we'll actually take a look at that, and you'll see that rather than selecting checks, you'll select EFT, and it's a breeze. You know, you're not printing checks. You're not worrying about whether the checks are in the printer the right way, whether they lined up, stuffing the envelopes, mailing them, all of that good stuff. And the setup is pretty easy, and we'll walk through all of that. So it also allows you to cut some costs. The cost of check stock, which is even if you decide to print remittances, you're printing those on just plain copier paper versus checks. The toner takes a lot less toner to print a remittance. And actually in GP 2010 you have the ability to email your remittance, so you don't even have to send anything in the mail. You can save on labor, the time it takes management to sign the checks, the time it takes you to stuff envelopes. For those of you who are paying, 200, 300 vendors a week, this can be a considerable time savings. And even if you don't have that many vendors, it still can be a time savings. And again, on the postage. So let's just take a look at our agenda today. We've already talked about the overview of EFT, and so then we're going to jump into what types of setups are necessary in order for you to start using EFT for Payables. There's an EFT file format that we will set up together. I'll show you the steps for doing that. And typically, once you've set that up and sent a sample file to your bank, they're pretty clean. You may have one or two changes that you need to make to the file format. And we can help you with that if that's the case. But for the most part, these file formats are pretty straightforward. Then we'll go into the vendor records. I'll show you where you set up the vendor's checking or savings account information in order for your payment to go into their account. Then we'll look at your company checkbook at the window where you need to complete the fields in order for your bank to recognize your account from the file. And then we'll go into an actual live demo of generating the prenotes, creating an EFT batch, printing EFT remittances, generating the EFT file, transmitting the EFT file. We won't actually do that, but I'll show you how you locate the file, because everyone has a different bank and a different process. But if you're familiar with your online banking and you do have that service with your bank, and it's important to note that you do need to sign up with your bank for you to be able to upload a file to them. And then we'll go through what happens when you void an EFT transaction. So the first thing you want to make sure of, if you don't know if you own EFT for Payables, or even that you've activated EFT for Payables, and you may not have access to this, but your system administrator should, you would go into the registration window in Dynamics GP under Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, System, Registration. And down below you can see the list of modules, and you just need to make sure that module is checked off. If you do not own that module, it won't show up in the list. The next slide is the window that we'll take a look at in GP, where you select the type of EFT file format. And that's under, if you use the area pages, it's on the financial area page, cards, EFT file format. Now there are two different types of formats. I've been doing this for several years, and the two different types of formats that I've been working with are either PPD or CCD. And your bank will be able to tell you which format they require for you to use. And I've gotten mixed information, so I can't make any recommendation as to which file format your company should use. I wish it were that easy. But different banks require different formats. And so you can see down below what these file formats do is they create a text file with all of the data necessary for transmitting electronically. The next window is the vendor EFT maintenance window, and this one can be a little tricky to find. It's under vendor addresses, so if you go to cards, purchasing vendor addresses, if you go to the vendor window, you might be confused as to how to get there, but you have to actually click on that address button from the vendor maintenance window. And from there, you can have different EFT banks for different addresses for a vendor. Typically, you're probably going to have one, but if there's ever that situation, you can enter EFT information based on which vendor address you're sending the payments to. And we'll go into that deeper when we're in the actual demo. Then we're going to take a look at the checkbook maintenance. So this is your company's checkbook. This window may look familiar to some of you, maybe not. If you're doing payables now, you're probably going into this next check number field periodically to reset the check number if you have a printer jam or something like that. And so from there, we're going to go down to the button EFT Bank, and this is the window for your actual checkbook. Similar to the vendor EFT setup window, a little more information. And then from there, we'll go into the payables options. And this is the window where we will set up what type of format we're going to use, how we're going to number the EFT payments, and where those files are going to be sent once you generate an EFT file. And so now we'll just get right into the demo. So I'm in Dynamics GP 2010, and I have selected the financial area page. So the first thing I'm going to show to you is the file format. And so if I look over here under cards, you'll see there's an option here, EFT File Format. And that's, again, financial area page, cards. So if you're going down through cards, you'd go cards, financial, EFT File Format. So I'm just going to select it from my area page. And I'm going to use the lookup because I have created a couple of different formats for you today. I created a CCD format and a PPD format. So I'm just going to select the CCD format to begin with. And you can see it's a CCD format because when I set this up, I selected CCD. If I take you out of here for 1 minute, you can see there are several different types. And dealing with U.S. banks here, it's usually the PPD or the CCD. So it's a notch of file with just the proper extension based on what your bank tells you. So if we look at CCD, up here is where you drive what you're seeing below. So on the file header, these are the fields that are going to be in the file header. And your bank will provide documentation on what they require in all of these different areas if you ask them. So if I'm looking at the file header, I come over here, I'm going to expand on here. I can actually see what each field is. So field 1 is the length of 1. It starts at position 1, 1, and it's a constant of 0. If I go to the next, you can see there's a little more here. The record type is the EFT priority type from the actual checkbook setup. I'm going to actually minimize this a little. It's a little confusing for you to see it all in one window like that. There we go. So if we look at the next field, you can see company ID. It's pulling from our checkbook setup. File creation date. So if there's a date format you need to change, you can come right into this field. And I can just scroll through based on the documentation, the file header, field 6, length 4. And if you have the documentation, these will make more sense to you. I can also look at what they want in the detail. What are the different fields? What do they require? I can map out from a table name and pull it directly from GP. So the EFT transit routing number, EFT bank account. And so that you have the ability to go in and fine-tune this file based on your bank's requirements. You can see that was the CCD, the PPD. It's just I selected a different format type. And from here, I would encourage you, once you have a file format created, that you export that file format for safekeeping. And here is where you will set when you export this, where do you want that to go? And so I actually have a folder here, EFT for Payables, and I'm going to put it in here. Let's see, PPD. And on this one, and so I'm telling the system, when I import, look at this location. When I export, look at this location. So for now, I'm just going to export a copy, and it will create that file and show me what I have out there, so that if anything should happen to that format, I have an extra format here. The other nice thing about this is if you have multiple Dynamics GP company databases, you can export this file from one company and import it into other companies. Maybe not a big deal if you don't have to change any of this data, but if you have to change the file format at all, it makes it a lot easier to do it in one company, do the testing for the most part in one company, and then export from here and import into another company. All right, so let's go over to the actual checkbook maintenance. So if we look at our company checkbook under Financial Area page, Cards, Checkbook, and I have one that I set up here, First Bank. And from this window, the only thing you need to make sure you have set up for EFT is your bank account number here. So make sure you put your bank account number there. EFT Bank, And I say that it's in both places, but sometimes those file formats pull from this window and sometimes they pull from this. So just as safekeeping, you could put it in this window. So when you first come into this window, it's blank. None of these fields are available. It's actually defaults to none. Must be alphabetical. It defaults to none, but I've selected United States. Then all of these fields opened up for me. So I went through and I put in my bank's transit routing number, the banking account number that I want the funds to be taken out of, the tax ID number, and then your bank identification number. This is a number the bank should be able to provide you with. This is their ID, not to be confused with company ID, which is your company's ID. It can be a little confusing in this window, so if you take nothing else away from this window, the bank identification number refers to the actual institution you're using to receive the funds, and down here refers to your actual company information, your company's ID with the bank. And I just used Fabricam. I'm in the Fabricam company, so I used Fabricam for the company name and small company name. If you have a long company name, sometimes you have a shorter company name for small company name. Everything else that defaults here, the service class code of 200, blocking factor of 10, format code, priority code, for the most part, these are perfect as is. If there's a different service class code that you need to change on your file, this is where you would do it. So that's the general area where you're setting up your checking account information for sending payments. And so then we're going to go into the Payables Options window. And in this window, you can continue to use your AP check numbers, or you can designate EFT numbers. And in this window, we're telling the system, when I generate EFTs, use a prefix of EFT with a bunch of zeros and then increment one at a time. So when you see EFT in a vendor inquiry, you'll know right away that it was an EFT payment and not a check. Over here is where we select one of those formats that we created, and we have two. I've selected the PPD. You can require that prenotes get sent. So if I check this off, you can say what the grace period is. I've opted not to so that I can actually generate the files today with no problem. This is where I have told the system, when you create an AP EFT file, this is where I want the file to go to. So if you ever need to change that, you would just come into this window and map it out somewhere else. And you can see I have a file from another day in here. Whoops. Okay. So from this window, I can also generate prenotes, and we'll come back to that. Actually, while we're here, let's just take a look. So generating prenotes, once you have your vendors set up, you would select which checkbook and what format ID, which is the PPD. And for any record dated on or before, so if you've already prenoted for a specific period, you wouldn't need to prenote again. So I'm just going to say for this date. And when I click Process, it creates a prenote file, and it tells me where I will find that file. So if I go out to this location, sorry, my mouse is not working very well here. So I could find payments here, or I can find my prenote file right here that I just generated. And that's the file I would upload on my online banking site. Okay? All right, so I'm just going to save that information. The next part we'll look at is what do we do for the vendor side. So I'm going to now switch over to the purchasing area page, and I'm going to pull up a vendor. And note that in this window there's nothing about that they are an EFT vendor. It's under the address. And so I'm going to choose the remit to address to look up. I can look at the details that way by clicking on the link, or I can go to address here and select the remit to. So I just need to make sure that if I have different addresses that I update the remit to address with the EFT information. So here I've chosen this address, and note there's a little button here at the lower right hand corner to enter EFT information for this specific address. So this window is a little less intimidating than the checkbook window. You'd select United States if it is a United States vendor, what the bank name is for that vendor, their routing number, their bank account number. Other than that, all you have to do over here is just check which type of account it is, checking or savings. And that's all you need to fill out for the vendor. So change the bank, country, or region from none to United States. Enter the bank name. Enter the routing number and bank account number, and what account type. And that's sufficient for the EFT file. Okay? All right. So we'll just exit there. And let's actually create a check batch. So I'm going to walk you through how you tell the system that it's not going to be a check but an EFT payment. So if I come down to the transaction area of payables, I'm going to start with batches. And for the sake of today's seminar, I'm going to say EFT payments. So there isn't an option for EFT, so we select computer check. And by selecting that, you'll notice payment method is now available to you. If you're doing EFTs, you mark EFT. In previous versions, EFTs and checks could be done in the same batch, which could be confusing. Now there is not that ability. You do have to have them in separate batches. Posting date and check date over here. Make sure to select the bank that you've set up with EFT information, and then select transactions. Select payables checks. And from here, I'm just going to click Build Batch because I know I only have one vendor set up with EFT information. And so it will only look at those vendors with EFT information when you click Build Batch with EFT marked. So I can see it's done grabbing all the information, and I can still look at the check information or the payment information in this window, and I can see it's for this vendor, Ace Travel. And I can unmark any of these that I don't want to pay. So from here, once I have the vendor selected and the invoices I want to pay, click Process. And it's saying what the date is and what the GL posting date is. So if you wanted the date to be a little later than the check date because of the delay and how long it takes to process, you could do that. I would recommend keeping these two at the same date. And so it's going to print a separate remittance. I'm going to click Process. We'll just take a look at the remittance. So this remittance form comes up. And notice you can send this in an email if you have your email functionality set up in GP 2010. We're not actually going to go through that today, but just know that you can, instead of printing to hard copies, you can send it in an email if you're on GP 2010. Click Process, and I'll just show you what a typical remittance statement looks like, and it's going to launch it in Word because I selected Template, which is another functionality in GP 2010. And because I'm on a demo machine, it's probably taking a little bit longer than it would on your machine. It's definitely taking longer. I apologize for the delay. And so once you have the remittances, what you do is the same process as a check batch. You would post the batch, and then all you really need to print is the EFT payment register. There are a lot of different reports you may see in my demo machine because we have so many different products installed. But really the only thing you'd want to print, if you're a company that likes to have printouts for auditing purposes or whatnot, you can do that. So here on Fabricam, here's the remittance statement for your vendor, the different vouchers that were paid, and the total amount. So you could send this in the mail. From here, we click Post, and this will update the vendor record. It will update the general ledger. It will update the checkbook. And so I'm just going to show you the EFT payment register. And here's the EFT payment register showing you that you paid one vendor, their bank information, their bank number, their transit routing number, and the total amount. And so I see there's a question, is tax registration number ours or the bank's? So I'm assuming this is on the vendor side. So the vendor tax information, that would be their tax ID. And Zach, if you could just let me know if that's what you're referring to by answering in chat, that would be great. So if we go on, the next step after posting the batch is when you're going to actually generate the file that gets uploaded to the bank. So we're going to generate the EFT file. Again, that's under the purchasing area page, generate EFT file. I'm going to select the appropriate checkbook. You can see I have one batch out there for this amount. So nothing at this point has gone to the bank. So if you only do this, your vendor will not be paid. So you need to make sure that you finish the process by generating the EFT file. So I'm going to select the batch, generate EFT file, and this is where I'll find my file. So when I'm on my online banking, I'll browse out to this file and upload it to the bank. So Zach was saying the setup under bank info in checkbook maintenance, that's your company's tax ID. So it's, you're welcome. Okay, so once you have that file, you upload it to the bank and you're all set. Your EFTs have gone. You'll most likely get a confirmation back from your bank, and your AP is done for that week. Now let's say that you find out that you need to void an EFT. Voiding an EFT is the same as voiding an AP check. So you would void it in this window. However, there is no file generated from GP for a voided payment. So here's the payment we just made. I can void this, but it will not create the file. You'll have to manually contact the bank, or maybe there's a process on your banking site to reverse a payment. So just know that once you send that file, GP is kind of done with it. It won't make corrections for you. Okay. So I'm actually going to open it up for questions now. I'm going to unmute the session. Hopefully the static is gone. There's a little bit there, not too bad. So if you have a question, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer.
Hi, this is Betty.
Hi, Betty.
We are currently using the system, and I have found I had a situation where I did need to void an EFT payment, and I was unable, like when I'm using a check, I just can go in and type in a specific check number, but I'm unable to type in a specific EFT number.
So it should look at this top document number. So for me, that document number is EFT. So you should be able to type in this number.
Okay, because I would I would click the from,
And you
and I tried to type in EFT with all the zeros and the number,
yes,
and it wouldn't come up, and then I tried just entering the number, I tried entering I just couldn't get it to, okay, that must be something on my end. I'm not sure
What version are you on, Betty?
No, I knew you were going to ask me that. Where do I find that?
Under Help. So if you have a little question mark here.
I have GP 2010.
Oh, well, it should be the same as what I'm showing you here. So when you type in EFT and use the looking glass, it doesn't bring you to that part of the list?
No, it doesn't.
Well, I'm not sure why that wouldn't be happening for you, because it is the document number. All I can say is, just in short, with all these zeros, it is hard to get the right number of zeros. But if that's something you'd like to look at offline, I'd be happy to look at it with you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can you briefly go over the generate EFT files one more time? Is this what we would then upload to our bank as a form of positive pay?
Yes. So
Okay.
let me just do a quick check batch again so that we have a file to upload. So once you go, are you comfortable with the whole check process and what we did there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just need to create another one so that I have a batch. And I'm skipping the printing of the remittance. The other thing I didn't mention to you all is, in the Generate EFT file, there's another opportunity to print remittances. So right up here, you can print another EFT remittance report or whatnot. So we created the check batch. Then I went back under Purchasing Transactions, Generate EFT File.
Okay.
I then selected the checkbook, and once I select the checkbook, it will come up with all of those batches that have had EFT payments made.
Gotcha. Sorry, I missed that part.
That's okay. And you just mark the checkbox and generate.
Okay. Now, say we had a vendor who, I don't know, 1 week wanted an EFT payment, the next week would rather get a paper check. Is it just, I mean, the transaction would be entered the same under payables. It's just when you're creating your batch to either select checks or select EFT payments. Is that the only difference that we'd specify?
It will not show up in a check batch, that vendor, because you've set up EFT information.
Okay.
So if you were to go in, there's an inactivate button. They'd be kind of a pain in the neck, actually. You'd have to go into the EFT bank and inactivate the EFT for that week.
Okay. So once you've set it up as an EFT vendor, then it's permanently an EFT vendor
Unless
until you go
inactivate,
back in there and
yeah.
inactivate.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
What
I hope
you
we
could
wouldn't have
do,
that issue, but you never know.
right. What you could do, though, if you know that there's an invoice they want to pay you on, you could have different address IDs.
Okay.
You could say, you know, check address, EFT address, and then just have EFT information on that address. You just have to know when you're entering the invoice to select the appropriate remit to address.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You just need 2 vendor IDs for the same vendor.
2 address IDs for the same vendor.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions?
This is Betty again. You said you were not going to be going over the email process today. Are you planning another session for that? Because that's another thing. I'm unable at this time to get the emails, the remittance sheets sent directly to the providers. We have them all set up with their email addresses and everything, and it's not going through.
Yeah, there's definitely setups. I don't have that slated to cover in a webinar at this point. Good idea to put that out there. I do know that you have to set up email settings in the Payables module. So in this window you have to set up, and you have to have Outlook, and I don't have an Outlook profile. It works with Outlook. It won't work with Google or
Yeah,
Gmail.
and I do have Outlook.
Okay. So you want to go into this window and enable the vendor remittance. And then you have to go into each vendor, and there's another window there. So if we go into the vendor, under email here, what you allow to go as a remittance. So perhaps there's one of those areas you haven't completed the setups.
Okay. All right. I will check there.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'll just ask one more. I went into my actual Great Plains and I looked like to void a historical payment, and some of mine are showing the document number remit and a number, not EFT.
So perhaps that's how yours are numbered. If you go into the, let's see, on financial, checkbook, and pull up your checkbook, EFT bank, and then payables options, this is where you'll know what it's naming those remittances. I'm sorry, those EFT payments.
Okay, because it does show EFT, the EFT number on the remittance itself, not a check number.
So it's probably using remit and not EFT. Other questions?
Just one more. You said this was going to be available on the website, just in case I wanted to refer back to it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And you all have our website address, tidestonesolutions.com?
Mm-hmm.
Great. We will definitely have this available probably the middle of next week on our website. If you don't see it, shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we get that done.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all for joining the webinar. Brandon will be in touch. Any feedback you have, again, this is a new process for us. It's our second monthly webinar. So we'd love to have some feedback on what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, maybe things to improve our process. Otherwise, you can just take a look at this on the web if you wanted to review any areas or share it with coworkers. We're happy to share that around. So having said that, we'll finish up, and I hope you all have a great day.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.